Welcome into another edition of the Varsity 4 podcast. Justin, Barney, Sponge Franklin coming to you like we do every week. And man, it is week 10 of the high school football season. We're down to our final 3 weeks. Remember, we got an extra bonus week out of the hurricane coverage and cancellations. But before we look ahead to our week 10 slate, we look back at our week 9 and St. Augustine Bartram was our game of the week. Expected a little bit more. I had a couple other big ones, Mandarin and Fletcher. Mandarin won that game a little bit differently than we thought. So Rains, Creekside, I thought that was game of the year type contender with just the offense and defense, and did not turn out that way. Rains was just too good. So we'll fly through our week 9 before we look ahead. Sponge, and to me, Range really kind of established itself as the number one team, pulled away. It was actually a close game in the fourth quarter of that one, and then the Vikings just kind of took charge and used that defense like we know them to have, and really just kind of nailed that hammer in the coffin of Creekside. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we talked about could there be a potential upset special? Could Creekside create a shootout type of game because of how good their offense has been and how good their offense usually is? But, and then on the flip side, too, Rain sometimes has kind of started off slow and kind of let people hang around, but they're so good that usually when it comes to that second half, that fourth quarter, all of a sudden they can groundswell you, too, and score 21 or something, and just next thing you know, you thought you were in a game, and now you're down 3 or 4 scores.
Yeah,
so that's kind of been their MO, and they've, they didn't have any struggles really in that game, but, they're impressive right now.
Yeah, they're really, really good. And I believe the last time there was an unbeaten Gateway Conference team in the regular season, of course, Rains is not going to get to 10-0, but looks like they're going to get to 9-0. Remember, they had the Madison County game that was scrubbed due to the hurricane. But the last time that Rains was undefeated in the regular season, 15-0 all the way back in 1997. Wilton Coffey was the head coach. Of course, they won a state championship. Some excellent players for Rains at the time: Maurice Harris, Lito Shepard, Jabbar Gaffney. I mean, so many good guys on that team. So many good guys on the Rains team. And this year, the cast of guys: Donovan Maslin, a head coach; T.J. Cole, quarterback; Adron Walker, Giant Simon, the big cat; Solomon Thomas, he's been banged up a little bit, but really, really good team. Tony Williams, another good one, and this Rains crew, we'll talk further about them in a minute, but really, really good. Like what I see out of Rains, and they are headed towards that unbeaten regular season. Got Yulee this week, and really a kind of formality game to wrap up the district championship, but Rains has been as advertised. Another one from last week: Bowles 38, Riverside 19, another Super 10 matchup. Bowles really kind of blew through Riverside and Tayshawn Gelsey and company. Our game of the week this week is Riverside in white, and I mean, Bowles has been thumping teams since week 1 against Rains.
Bowles is steadily, when you look up at the record and you see 7-1, and you go back to that week 1 game where they kind of hung around in the first half game, kind of struggled a little bit offensively in that game, but they've been clicking. The game that I circled, when you look at the schedule, that was where I think the other team that we have in our both Super 10 is that Oakleaf game. That was a shootout game. It could have ultimately went either way. They found a way to win that one. Oakleaf came up on the losing end of that one, but that's where this offensive team with Bowles is what they got. Now that they've continued on from that struggle from week 1, they're starting to click a little bit, and they're playing good football too right now.
Yeah, Bowles 57-50 in that Oakleaf game really could have lost that game just as easily as it won it. So Bowles has been moving along. They've had some dogfight games. Bishop Kenny was a dogfight game.
Yeah, that was the weird.
Yeah, Oakleaf was that dogfight game, but Bowles has really been moving along since week 1, and you expect that from Bowles. I know we've kind of been spoiled by the greatness of Bowles because Corky Rogers for so long. 10 state championships for him. Matt Toblin has kept it going. Wayne Belzer even kept it rolling in his couple seasons. But Bowles has just been so consistent for so long that we expect them, almost take them for granted in a little bit, because you expect them, the Bowles, the Trinities of the world. There's no such thing as rebuilding kind of times for those teams. You just expect that greatness to happen. And I look at that, and it's almost, you get spoiled by that a little bit. I mean, every year Corky was there, every year Joey Wiles at St. Augustine, every year Verlin's been at Trinity, every year Robbie Pruitt was at UC and then Union County. You really expect that greatness, and then one day it just kind of ends, be it retirement or slippage, whatever the case. So you got to appreciate that greatness, the Trinities, the Bowleses, the St. Augs, all those guys are around getting it done. So just a testament to Matt Toblin and his staff for being able to kind of keep it rolling. Nease thumped Atlantic Coast 44-12, their first game since late September. Man, their defense has been phenomenal. 77 points allowed all season long. And I do think Nease can finish undefeated.
I do too.
First year since 2006. That was a year after their state championship season. Tebow was an 06 graduate. The 06 Panthers were led by Ted Stakaitis. They went back to the state championship game and lost to Robert Marv and Tampa Plant in 06. But, man, they are clicking along. So really good games last week. And St. Augustine 48-21 over Bartram in our game of the week. It's getting really kind of turned on a dime. St. Augustine had 2 games last week. They were +8 in the turnover category.
That's how you win.
Yeah, 6 turnovers against Clay on Monday night. Took 3 pick sixes back to the house. Lachlan Hewlett had a pick in that game. They had 3 more turnovers against Bartram Trail and turn all those into points, and you win 48-21. So a little bit of a lopsided rivalry. St. Augustine won 19 in a row in that series, lost 5, and that has now won the last 2. So Jackets just kind of keep it rolling. Carl Jenkins Jr., love him. He's so good, so fast.
He's like a blur, man.
Samori and Wingo, those receivers. I remember Lachlan Hewlett, we met with him last year, and he said, man, these guys make my job easy. I just throw it up, and they're down there. And they did, man. The Jackets receivers are really, really impressive, and Lachlan Hewlett is as well. One more from last week. Mandarin 8, Fletcher 0. A little bit of a surprise, huh?
Yeah, we've talked about the struggles that Mandarin's had offensively with the injuries, obviously to their quarterback and some other guys being banged up, but still a surprising number. C4 is going to put together always has a physical bunch on that defensive side, and they kind of tend to struggle offensively. But for you to only score 8, basically, that's a little bit of an alarming concern. So because Fletcher this year, this is not one of Fletcher's better years.
Right.
They lost a lot to graduation last year. You're looking at a 5-5 Fletcher team probably to finish out the year, and so they're not even a playoff type team.
Right.
Like you literally got 3 weeks to get this corrected or figure out what. I mean, we already know what it is. But yeah, it's not, like I say, it's just one of those things that it's almost so tough that the injury bug bit you like that. The only saving grace was the fact that this happened so early in the year.
Right.
So you were hoping that you were going to maybe get some things figured out, scheme-wise to be like, all right, this is the type of team we are now. We're not the type of team we thought we were. How can we get these playmakers the ball in space? How can we, be able to try to run the ball a little more than what we thought we were going to have to do? And like I say, now you literally have 3 weeks to even kind of figure something else out before you get into that win or go home situation.
Yeah, and it's tough. And Mandarin is in 6A this year, so they're not in that gigantic class with Creekside. They're in there with Oakleaf, which we'll get to that game in a minute. But Mandarin Oakleaf this week for the district championship, and with Mandarin,
I like Oakleaf, man.
Same, and I'm with you. I think
because they can score.
Yeah,
I think they can score. So.
I think the offensive issues are really pronounced at Mandarin, just with the injuries, and I don't even know if Jamie French played last week in the game, and Trammell obviously been injured with the leg. He's out for the year, so you expect a lot more from Mandarin, and due to injuries, they really we saw glimpses of Mandarin in week 1. Against Creekside, how good that team was at full strength, and they blew Creekside out of the water 57-13. That to me was a true representation of what Mandarin.
I think that's how they would have pretty much looked in every game.
I agree,
except maybe the IMG game, but I think that's how they would have looked. I think they would have clicked. I think Trammell would have averaged 250 to 300 yards passing every night. Jamie would have had a touchdown or 2 every night, over 100 yards receiving. Then that would have helped with these new backs come along a lot better with their ground game, because they lost their back from last year who went on to college, and just now you just got thrown everything into a wrench where it's like, all right, freshman quarterback, let's see what you can do, buddy.
You're having to learn on the fly and adjust and to Knox, and no knock on Knox, but he's a freshman starting and on a team that's further along than he is or any other freshman would be. And I think he's getting the good reps. All the young guys team getting those good reps, but you're thrown into a team that had state championship type expectations, and you're having to learn on the go, and you're the new guy and stuff. It good for the future, but not for the present kind of deal. But Mandarin won the state championship before with Carson Beck and DeMario when they were 6-4 in the regular season and lost their Week 11 game. So anything is possible. You're getting those valuable reps during the season, and I do think Mandarin is still to be considered a playoff team that can make a deep run. So before we get into our Week 10 games, we'll look at our Super 10, and I've got really the only changes I have in mind are the 9 and 10 teams. So at 10 for me, I've got a new team, a little bit of an outsider in our area, and I considered putting in Baker County, Beachside, moving them back in. Even Union County, I considered the Tigers down there. I got Flagler, Palm Coast in at number 10, kind of an outlier in terms of teams we cover. We get into Palm Coast, out Swanee, Columbia County, but I've got Flagler, Palm Coast at 6-1.
Okay.
Haven't played the most difficult schedule, but I've got them sliding in at number 10 this week. They got a big game against Spruce Creek on Friday. So they are 6-1. At number 9, I've got another newcomer, Fleming Island. They joined the rankings for the first time this year. I know my Fleming Island folks will be happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I think Fleming lost early in the season to Riverside, lost to Oakleaf, lost to Creekside.
Yeah, both of those losses by were a field goal.
Yeah, you lost to Creekside, and
were a game they were up big.
Yeah,
and they kind of collapsed in that fourth quarter against Creekside.
Yep. So you lose two games by a field goal, and then the game against Riverside, you're leading in the fourth quarter, and you end up losing by 9. So, and Fleming Island is a team that went through some turbulence beginning of the year, had to change a coach. Chad Parker left, quit, resigned, forced to resign, whatever the situation was, out at that program right before the season started. And Derek Cipoletti, fantastic coach, played linebacker at Orange Park, went to UCF in college, was a fantastic high school player, super loving guy, but really kind of cut his teeth in the area coaching with his dad. His dad started up at Fleming Island. He coached at Bradford. He was at Oakleaf, led them to a great best season Oakleaf history. Derek Cipoletti was a part of, missed the playoffs at 8-2 after that. So you took him into that, elevated him from a defensive coordinator to interim head coach, and he has really responded. A lot of good guys on this Fleming Island team. They're 5-3, have already showed up the district championship. So great job by Chip, Sebastian, Demir Jackson, all those guys over there at Fleming Island. They're at number 9 for me. 8-1 are all the same for me. Ponte Vedra at number 8, Mandarin at 7, Bradford at 6, Oakleaf 5, Bowles 4, St. Aug 3, Nease 2, and Rains number 1.
Yeah, that's my 1 through 8 as well.
Okay.
And I have Beachside at 9 because I still kind of like what they've done, and I have Fleming Island at 10. So I could have Fleming.
Man, Fleming Island pasted Beachside.
They did, but record-wise, Beachside still got the better record. Yes, they beat them. I know that was one of the games, because Fleming actually beat Ponte Vedra as well.
Yeah,
so it's like they beat both of those teams at 8 and 9 in mine. But I don't know. Like I say, let's let it play out. Let's see what they can do. These last 3 weeks. But
and to be fair, Beachside has a higher RPI than Fleming Island. So even with the head-to-head, I get it. And
Max Preps helped me out with deciding that last little bit. But I just the eyeball. Again, this is when we talk about these rankings and stuff. It's in all actuality, I think Fleming Island might be playing better than Beachside right now. So, if they had to play again this Friday, who would I pick? I'd probably pick Fleming Island.
Yeah.
So.
It makes sense.
I should flip my rankings right now.
Yeah, and somebody emailed me in last week, I believe, about Fleming Island and why is Ponte Vedra ranked ahead? Well, in the analogy I used, the example I gave is just because you beat, say you're ranked 50, and you beat the number 1 team. I mean, does Vanderbilt automatically go up in the rankings after beating Alabama? It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
So in every metric, Beachside has been ahead of Fleming Island. Yeah. So I get that.
Plus
even
it comes down to also, even in national rankings, like we're talking about in college, record-wise does fall into place. So technically, 2 losses is better than 3.
Right.
That's true. Deal. But again, head-to-head does matter, and so. Like I say, they're 9 and 10.
Yeah,
they're not. The discrepancy is not too far off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you can't flip them either way. That's. And like I say, we've been kind of I think our 9 and 10 spot has literally been a revolving door of the same 5 or 6 teams.
It's true.
Riverside right there, all that. So
I mean, you've had Riverside in, and I didn't move them in until last week, so there's always room for interpretation there. Okay, I'll throw something at you before you go into our week 10. So let's look at our 1 through 10 teams.
Okay.
And we'll say contender or pretender to go 2 rounds deep into the playoffs. Okay. We're not saying state championship time. So your number 10 team, and I mean. So basically, all of our teams are going to be the same except Palm Coast and Beachside. So your number 10 team, my number 10 team. Flag of Palm Coast, contender or pretender to go 2 rounds deep.
Yeah, let's see. Who would they possibly match up with? Can you give me a team?
Like DeLand, Spruce Creek, OC University.
So all right. So they're playing Spruce Creek Friday night.
Yep.
So that would be a good barometer check to see if they had to play them in the first or second round. I'll go pretender for right now.
I'm going to say pretender as well. They lost to OC University 35-19, so I'm going to say as well 2 rounds deep in the playoffs. I'm going to say no, pretender as well. For your number 10 team,
which is your number 9 team, is Fleming. So can they make? I think they can right now.
I'm going to say contender for.
I think they can make it. We're not talking about a state championship run, but can they win 2 games in the playoffs? I think they can.
Okay, I'm going to say your number 9 team is Beachside. I'm going to say pretender for 2 rounds deep.
I would say that same team.
Yep.
I would say the same thing with them too.
So number 8 for us is Ponte Vedra.
This is where we're all the same.
Yeah, so 8 for Ponte Vedra, 2 rounds deep in the playoffs. Contender, pretender.
I want to say contender just because their team always is that kind of playoff. They're built for the playoffs in a sense. They kind of just win scrappily. So I'll go. They can win 2 rounds.
Okay, I'll say contender as well for 2 rounds deep in the playoffs. Mandarin, this is gonna be a tough one. Contender, pretender.
I'm gonna say no right now. I'm gonna say no, just because that offense, your offensive prowess scares me to where I know you're not gonna average 8 points a game like you did against Fletcher, but what's the number gonna have to be? Are you gonna be able to score?
Yeah.
Can you score 17 in a game? Can you score 3? Can you score 3 touchdowns? Can you give me 21? A night, and that's going to be, like I say, when you play that second round game, if you have to play, like if last year, like a Lake Mary type team. I know they're not in that district or that classification, but if you had to play a team like that in the second round, I would not pick you.
Yeah, I'm going to say contender still for the second round. So that's tough. All right, 6 Bradford. I'm going to say contender.
They're definitely always in there
for second round. I mean, they're going to get Newberry or Cocoa in the regional final, and that's going to be a beast to get there. You got to work out those offensive keeks. Oakleaf at number 5, contender.
What you got? You go for
contender. I'm going to say contender.
I agree.
I'm going to say contender.
I think offensively, they've been great all year, and so when it comes down to playoffs, you got to play complimentary ball. You got to have some defense. But I think if you can score in those early rounds, you can kind of get in those shootout type of games. I think you can make a run. Okay,
I agree. I think contender for Oakleaf for me. Bowls.
So we're gonna have a lot of high school football playoff talk then.
Yeah,
this is good.
So Bowls for me.
I feel good about a lot of these teams. I really do in the playoffs. Getting to at least the second round.
Bowls contender, pretender.
I think they're definitely a contender.
They've never not made the state semifinals under Matt Toblin, so I'm going to say contender as well. 3, 2, and 1. I think we're pretty much the same on St. Aug, Nease, and Rains.
Yeah.
Contenders all the way through.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm the same. I don't think there's any kind of qualms on that. Okay, week 10, got 3 nights of football. Monday night, which is tonight.
You got some Monday night.
Monday night game.
Trinity's got 2 games this week. They played tonight and Friday night.
A Wednesday slate, UC in Providence. I think that's going to be a good game. Ponte Vedra goes to the IMG Academy white team, not the national team. So Hawthorne just drummed them this past week. So I do think Ponte Vedra can win that game. A couple others from this week. Not a lot of really good games this week. Buchholz at Bartram Trail. Decent game, but Bartram is struggling, and Buchholz is not what it used to be. Parker and Inglewood. I like Parker's ability to get to maybe that 500 stretch. Mike Holloway has done a really good job there. Fleming Island brought him back down to earth last week, but man, they beat Bishop Kenny, and I like what they've done. Fleming Island going to Middleburg. Middleburg's kind of been hitting that rough part of the schedule, and Fleming Island has really kind of just mashed it. I think the big game of the week, Mandarin at Oakleaf. I like the Knights in that one.
I do too.
I like the Knights in that one.
I do too, just because of, like we just said, offensively, McKissick throwing it, the running game with Foy, like they've been scoring points, man. So Mandarin's D hasn't been as good as their D has been. I obviously had a shutout 8-0 win last week against Fletcher, but again, Fletcher's offense is not what Oak Leaf's going to give you.
Yep.
And then on the flip side, can you ultimately outscore them? And I just don't think you can score enough points.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's going to
be tough.
It's that simple.
Unless your defense turns in just an absolute.
You're going to have to get some takeaways.
Yep.
You're going to have to get some short fields to where your quarterback may not have to make like long drives, or you're going to have to hit a big player too.
Yeah.
So those are going to be the factors. If you can do some of that stuff, definitely you can win the game. It's not like it's like impossible, but I just right now where we are in the season, I like the way Oak Leaf is playing. Much better than where Mandarin's at.
I'm with you. A couple others this week. Our game of the week, Varsity 4 game of the week, Riverside at Ed White.
Old school West Side rivalry.
Old school West Side clash. People don't know about this rivalry when it was Lee and White was fantastic.
Definitely.
Clash and a few years ago. Remember the 84-0 game?
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like, we were talking about the Zarepeth numbers. Like,
man.
Yeah, I was like, OJ, what are you doing, bro? Come on.
Yeah. Ed White put the beating on them, 84-0. And they didn't play for a few years after that. Speaking of Zarephath, they keep cranking it up. Jordan Durham was the Jaguars Player of the Week last week after throwing for that truckload of offensive numbers, 9 TDs, 568. But he's actually second in the country in passing yardage, which is just insane.
That's pretty cool.
He's closing in on a 5,000-yard passing season, which
wild.
is just absolutely crazy, and he's a big boy. And I remember when he came into Zarephath, he was really, really short. If you remember, HJ, his older brother who led Range to a state championship. I mean, Jordan was smaller, but he is a big. He's a good-looking quarterback now. Lefty, throws a good ball, and they got a trip out to Tallahassee, North Florida Christian, and they play a few more games this season, so keep an eye on Zarephath. And again, they're not playing the most craziest competition, but he's putting up some numbers, and Ivory Durham is coaching over there, and they got a little air raid of an attack over there. So really cool to see that in terms of national kind of prominence. That'll do it for a Week 10 edition of the Varsity 4 podcast. We'll come to you next week and have another topic. Sponge and I are talking about putting together our favorite players of like the last 5 years. So throw us some mentions. We've got a little running list, but we'll save that for you for next week. For Week 10, Justin, Barney, Sponge Franklin will come to you next week and start talking about playoffs as those matchups or those people who are on the bubble really kind of materialize. But for a Week 10 edition of the Varsity 4 podcast, Justin, Barney, Sponge Franklin, we'll catch you next week.